Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Final Fantasy VII Remake review. I remember when this game was announced when I was 2 years old, and here we are, 30 years later. The Final Fantasy VII Remake is finally out. We've all played it. We've all beaten it. You know, I'm looking at you, Kotaku. Are you even beating these games before you're reviewing them? We are. So
we beat it and then take like 4 weeks to marinate on it.
Yes, we are like the steak dinner of our reviews, and we're doing a group review today with some of the members of the DweeBros crew. I am Zach, aka DweeBo. We'll give a little preface about where we're coming from with this game because there's different sentimentalities, different people's backgrounds of coming into this because this is a remake of a absolute classic. Some can be polarizing with this review. Some can be, I'm just playing the game, whatever. So where I'm coming from, played this game not when it when it launched when I was a little kid. I didn't really understand, turn-based stuff, all that, much back then. But then as I got older, I got into middle school. I was online typing, what are the best games I should play? And Final Fantasy VII kept coming up. I played it in middle school, freaking loved it. Beat that game, absolutely adored it. I understood it then as a middle schooler. This is a classic. And played and beat the remake. And then I beat it in hard mode. And then we are joined by Travis McCoy.
Yes.
And what is your relationship with this game?
Yeah, I grew up a Nintendo, like N64 and Xbox kid, so I didn't play a Final Fantasy game until I was 24 years old.
Okay.
And then I played 7. That was the 4th one of the games that I played, and it was my first game that I played that wasn't a 2D, the original 7, that wasn't like a 2D, like 4, 5, and 6 style. So I played 7 probably a couple of years ago on the PS4. I don't know if you call it a remaster. It's a port, basically, the PC version. And I loved it. I loved it. I went in kind of like not sure how it would age. I wasn't sure if people were overhyping it or if it had kind of been lost to time a little bit because it looks kind of rough when you just see screenshots sometimes. It's like this game doesn't look great. The mini games look goofy, that kind of thing. But the story and the gameplay is really good. It's really solid ATB, with limit break kind of turn-based style. I really enjoyed it a lot. I had a great time with it. I never delved into the compilation stuff. I just played it, had a great time, put 60 hours in, did all the main side content, and put it away, and then I moved on to other games. But I really enjoyed the original 7. When they announced they were doing a remake, my literal attitude was, I'm down for this. But my only expectation is make this one your own. That's kind of been my mentality is we have the original, so I wanted them to make this one their own. So.
Cool. And then we are also joined by Zach Campbell. Hello, Zach.
Hey. Hello. So I came into this game. I've known about Final Fantasy VII for a really long time. I never played the original because I've never been a turn-based fan besides Pokemon. But it's always been one I really, really wanted to get into. I mean, I like Cloud Stripe's just iconic as far as the Final Fantasy series. So, but I can never just get myself to go back and play it for whatever reason. So when this came out, I was extremely excited because they said that, they're kind of adding a more action element to it and just giving it a little bit more of an overhaul. And I was like, yeah, I'm 100%, I'm all for it. So, actually being able to explore the story or at least this story was a lot of fun, and it allowed me to be able to go back to the other one, at least kind of get like synopsis and stuff like that and be like, oh, like, that's what's going on. That's what's so different. So that's been really cool. And that's kind of how I've viewed the other game, was just through kind of synopsis and theory videos and all this other stuff. So
yeah.
I was really, really excited to actually jump into this world for the first time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's get into our first category, graphics. What'd you guys think of the graphics? Did you play like on a 1080p? Did you play straight up 4K on a 4K television? How did you guys play that? On an HDR television? Because I played on HDR 4K. Was that how you guys played? Similar?
I played 4K HDR on the PlayStation Pro.
Yeah, me too. I should say on the Pro as well, yeah.
I actually, when I first started the game up, I was streaming. I streamed the first couple hours, like the first chapter or two on the PS4 on my Twitch. And when you stream on your PS4, it like shrinks everything down a little bit, and then it has the chat on the side. I don't know if you've ever streamed to Twitch just from your PS4 with no capture card, but I did that, and after playing for like an hour and a half, I was like, I'm doing this the wrong way. This game looks too good to play like condensed down on your screen like that. So that's how I played it. Zach, how'd you play it?
1080p TV. I have the original PS4, but to be completely honest with you, I don't think I've seen a prettier PS4 game.
Yeah.
Even my regular PS4, it handled it like a pro. I don't think I hardly noticed any like skipping or anything like that.
That's cool.
Just to be able to. Good.
You're on a regular PS4?
PS4, and there's like no skipping.
Because it's like a rock solid frame rate on the PS4 Pro, and I was curious how it would be on the regular PS4. So that's interesting to hear. It's the same. It was so well optimized. I feel like.
It really was.
I loved this. This reminds me. I think it's the similar engine, or I could be wrong, as Final Fantasy 15. At least it shares a lot of that graphical component of like the animations and like the clothes kind of shaking, like when the sword comes down and the attacks are coming. It just looks beautiful. I think from my point, coming from someone that loved the original, seeing these characters, in this new 4K with Cloud's hair, and they're moving, and you can see every single strand of hair. Oh my gosh!
Interestingly, this is actually a new engine. So Luminous is the engine they used for 15.
That's right, and this was Unreal.
Is Unreal 4.
Yeah. And
I feel like keep using Unreal 4.
I feel like people
phenomenal.
always said like Unreal had a distinct look, and it's like, it's on Unreal Engine, but it's like, I'm kind of digging Unreal. Like, it looked great for Kingdom Hearts 3. It looks great for this.
And the engine's more than just the graphics, but it was so smooth.
But there are parts in this, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but when it's Cloud, Tifa, and before we go in further, there will be full spoilers kind of going into this, because we're going to be talking kind of story stuff. We're going to talk full in this. But there's a point when it's Cloud, Tifa, and Barrett, and they're down in that kind of like they're shutting off that power. I forgot what the name of the chapter is. Chapter like 6 or something like that.
Reactor.
Yeah, they're shutting down those different reactor things, and you're climbing up. Those lamps. Yeah. And there's parts when you're climbing the ladder, and the lamp is right behind that ladder, and those lights. If you have HDR on your television, I can't even describe it. It looks like to me, who's grown up watching these cutscenes of Final Fantasy games and how beautiful they look. It's like I'm watching a cutscene. Yeah, almost.
And it's so like in gameplay.
Yes. Yeah. The lighting is beautiful.
And other examples are like the lightning effects, like all of the combat. When you're in combat, the graphical effects are like mind-boggling. The particles, when you hit things with your blade, the sparks that fly off. It literally looks. I know that they said that forever their goal was to make a game that looked like the Advent Children combat. Yeah. Like this looks better than that. Yeah. Like it really does. It's the lighting is phenomenal. To
go along with that, it goes into setting also with graphics is when you first see like places like Seventh Heaven. So for those like certain places have sentimental value to me, and seeing that like when you first come in, you see that setting. Oh my gosh. And
excellent interior design.
The extreme detail. So there was a lot part of the game where I'm walking so slowly, and I was kind of looking up at the buildings and like seeing the shop owners and seeing the signs and saying like, here's the item shops, and hey, brand new, we recommend the high potions, and like little tiny signs like that you can see throughout these, the different slum areas. That to me that's been my, most, what I was most excited for with this remake, which is, back on the original Final Fantasy VII, it's literally like Lego blocks of these characters. It is the most low polygon. So to expand on that and to see Seventh Heaven and the jukebox over here, and like just and Irith's house, like going from like this, they had great painted, like kind of hand painted like backgrounds back then for these PS1 games, and to see that expanded on and like 4K, it just took me to a whole different plane.
One thing that I've seen is kind of splitting people graphically in this game. There's two things, but the first one is, and I think it's weird because I think they look amazing, is the skyboxes. I've seen a lot of people. So I wanted to, so here's something. When I first was in the slums and I looked up at like the bottom of the plate, the skyboxes blew me away. I thought they looked phenomenal. I thought they looked out of this world, like something I'd never seen in a game. Just the way that they established the setting, you feel like you're underneath this giant thing. But the reason why I say it's controversial is I've seen several people in the wake of this game say, hey, this game looks great, but I hate the skyboxes. And everybody who says that it's too obvious that they're a JPEG. Like they're a high resolution. They're not a rendered thing. They're just literally a giant picture.
I will also say I think they used it to the best of their abilities, because there's a part when
Here's an example.
There's a part when you can see when the tower mission, when they're climbing up that tower is also in the distance. There's a lot of stuff in the distance with that cloud box, the skybox, and that is moving like parallax, like kind of it looks really good. I think with that, that was never jarring.
I agree. I think it looks good, but a lot of people say they look too static. They just look like a still image. And it reminded me of like an old filmmaking when they would do map paintings.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. That's basically what it is. And
that never took me out of it.
It only really enriched the experience for me. But I just figured I'd mention this as we're talking graphics. Several people have mentioned that, and I'm
very glad
really good.
You mentioned it, because, and this is a side note to get to my big note. On the original cover art, they kept the original cover art of this game, which is Cloud looking up at the Shinra Tower. I love that. Yeah. And why I love that box art is that tells you the whole game, at least this beginning, like we are fighting against, like we are basically these avalanche, like kind of rebels fighting against something way bigger than us. Like they're sucking up the planet. They are destroying the planet. Here's this little dude, this spiky-haired little runt, looking up at this thing like we're taking it down. I love that. That's why I love the box art. I love that they kept it. In this game, and Xenoblade Chronicles has a similar effect. In Xenoblade Chronicles, you're looking at these two giants. That's where the setting of the whole, the beginning of the game, the whole rest of the game is like you're looking at these giant gods you're on top of. And the whole game, you are aware you're on gods. Like you are walking on these like beings. Like that are stuck in place. Same with this game. You are always looking up at this corporation that's sucking the life out of the planet. And I think they enriched that more with this game versus the original. You are absolutely like surrounded by these plates and like Shinra Tower, especially when you first get there and they do that classic shot when you get to Shinra Tower and stuff. Yeah. Like I love that it's like it's still showing and reminding you like you're a little runt, like you guys are a bunch of like rascals trying to take down this kind of like bigger thing.
Then the only other thing is that this game has maybe the widest chasm between NPCs that give you quests and main character as far as quality of their facial design and stuff. It's so wide. Bad. But here's what I will say: some of them look like borderline PS2. Like me and Jacob I think we pissed you off, Zach. So we were posting screenshots of like NPCs from San Andreas. Like this is what this game looks like. But here's what I will say. Every single one of those people that looked goofy, I remember them because they had a goofy voice too. And they were asking me to do something goofy. And like the guys in the gym, they looked stupid. They looked so low quality, but they were freaking funny. Like they made me laugh. And this guy is like, I need to get into it. He looks, the guy that runs the gym just looks super goofy, or the guy that gives you the quest to go find the kids in the graveyard. He literally looks like they made his model in 10 seconds. But I just remember him. So they're memorable. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it didn't piss me off, but I guess it's coming from my perspective where I've played all these Final Fantasy games. They have done this forever. And if you played the Final Fantasy X PS2 game, when they did the remake, it's Titus and everybody's moving and facial animations, and then it goes to the NPCs. And I think it's, as much as this is hilarious, I will give you that in certain areas where these NPCs on Final Fantasy X, it was textures. Like, there was no animation, there was no form to the NPC. So I'm used to it in that regard. So, but I get it that people are like kind of taken back. I get that that's a point.
Zach Campbell, did that bother you at all?
Very much. That jarred me so much. I actually have the one that stuck out the most was the guy at the dress shop. When you had to go find the guy's dad. And
I didn't do that part.
Oh my gosh, it was just like, it was terrible. Like, I almost like took subtitles off, but I almost was like, I'm gonna keep these on to distract me from their mouth. because that's what bothers me the most. I don't care about the upper face, the mouth. I like watching people's mouth move. And so when they're just super goofy and weird and it's jarring.
The last thing on graphics, and this gets a little bit, I don't want to talk about story components. I do just want to say, I think as part of the presentation is the camera work in this game and the way everything's so snappy, and it goes from you're playing to you're in a little mini cutscene and there's guards coming in and they're storming, and they do that thing Kojima always does where when they're shooting, they'll zoom in on the gun and they'll show all the tactical pieces of the gun. And they just, I think that
it's very smooth.
It's
a transition
so
from gameplay, because I'll be walking and then you're walking up a hill or something, and then like the camera takes over. You think you're still playing. You're like still holding on the analog. And you're like, oh, I've transitioned God of War style straight into.
And they said that the biggest influence in terms of presentation and gameplay for them of modern games was God of War.
If you want to talk, I'm listening.
The music from the original is, of course, a classic. It's one of the best soundtracks, I think, of the Final Fantasy series. So I think it's always scary, because I think Final Fantasy X, you had a choice on the remake to play either the original or the new, and people were like, the original is way better. They changed. It's so finicky with people. Original, like, I love the soundtrack. What are you changing? Are you making it better? I adored the soundtrack as somebody who loved the original. I think they even took at some songs, a kind of Nintendo approach to it. And what I mean by that is, in some Nintendo games, like I'll give Breath of the Wild, I think, is a better example of some of the classic soundtracks or classic things. And you're like, how are they going to make it sound? Or the Link Between, what was the freaking
Between Worlds?
Link Between Worlds, or Link's Awakening. The Link's Awakening. Like, how are you going to remix this original thing and make it, kind of even better? And I think they mastered that with some of this, because some of it would be like piano coming up and you'd see Irith for the first time and it would go straight into that theme. And it's like, I just want to just melt. I was just melting at certain parts of this when you would notice what the soundtrack is or when the song was. They played with that. They played with the expectation of like these certain songs that were in the original.
Being someone that didn't really play the original, the music didn't stand out too much. I definitely could see themes. When Aerith came in, and then just certain things in the slums. But I've always just been a fan of like the final boss fights of any Final Fantasy game with the high chorus and and they nailed that at the end of the game. Opinion. It was you have
you have to do I forgot the freaking name of them to screw it up. Dark Angel Thesis or something, or whatever Sephiroth's theme is, or something like that.
One-Winged Angel.
One-Winged Angel. Dark Angel Thesis, whatever.
It's Evangelion.
Hot Topic, whatever.
So when I played 7, one of the first things I thought when I got to the end was I didn't find the music that memorable, the original 7.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was good, but like Aerith's theme, none of it really stuck out to me as like, man, it might have been I just played 3 of them in a row and now I was playing a 4th one. So it starts to run together. But coming back to this one now, number one, from a music production standpoint, they did an immaculate job. And it's not like you get one version of each of the old songs. You get like a battle theme version. You get a walking around version. You get it like imported into other elements of another, song. Like they took different elements of 2 different songs and put them together at times. And then you get like soundtrack versions you find running around the world, and you can listen to those on the jukebox while you throw darts. And they're like jazz. And so I guess really there's 2 categories. There's the original music redone, and then there's the new music. So for the original music redone, when I finished this game, I just wanted more, but I was going to play other things. I was working. I threw on this soundtrack on YouTube, and I was just listening to this, like the variety. Like there's some songs that are like industrial, like punk, right? Or industrial, like, what do you call it? Like electronic music. There's some parts that are more like pop. There's some parts that are like orchestral, and there's some that are very groove, like the Rotting Under the Pizza or whatever song, the do 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 do. Like do 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 do. Like it sticks with me so much more. And then I went back and listened to the original, and I was like, oh, these songs were there, but this remake fleshed them out in like a dozen different ways, in ways that the original didn't. where this is the definitive soundtrack to me of
Yeah,
Final
I
Fantasy
think so
VII
too.
now.
I also want to talk about the jukebox. You mentioned it. That was kind of used as like almost like an experimental, because some of those songs are from future places that we're going to go, hopefully, in the other remakes. There's the Gold Saucer. There's other songs who are like, okay, Cosmo Canyon's in there. Like, there's other stuff in there that we haven't experienced yet, but they went ahead and just said, let's just do a fricked up like country version of this, or let's take Chocobo and make it a rap, kind of like hip hop beat.
Oh my gosh!
It's almost using it as an experiment. I felt like the jukeboxes, they just made the musical producers go, just screw around and have fun for a weekend, and fun.
There were cool ones that like built the world. Did you find the guy singing karaoke of like the song? I would just stumble on stuff like that, and I was like, I stood there and listened to his whole song because it was funny. It was making me laugh.
I came in there laughing because it's so bad. It is so purposely bad that I couldn't believe what I was hearing in this whole great scheme of soundtrack and music. This game just puts you with the most farty sounding guy up on stage. It's great. Two songs I want to talk about real quick that were like shot me to the moon was when you are in the kind of tunnel underground kind of thing with Irith and the robot arm, and you meet those bandits, and that
yes,
like that remix of that original,
and then it goes into the hyped up version during the fighting.
Yeah, when it gets into the music of
that's my favorite track maybe in the whole game.
Yeah,
it's just
I was
so
high
energy. It's so high energy. It's so like groovy. It's fun.
And I was also vibing big time with when you're trying to get to Don Corneo, and it's Irith and Tifa fight for a second before they get to Cloud, and that da-da-da-da-da.
I know you. The Colosseum. What the hell?
Get down!
Don't, you stupid!
One song that I do want to point out is the song that plays in the Sector 5 slums when you're running around. I just was running around those slums doing those side quests because there's a bunch in that area in 2 different chapters. And I could not get enough of that song. And then they did lyrics over it for the credits.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of like Evangelion 2.0 when they did that song and then they did the singing over it at the end. It was kind of sad. Like I loved that little tune. I don't know if that was from the original and they redid it or if that was a new one, but it was great.
Gameplay. So the gameplay was, I think, leading up to this, I think the thing I saw most people fighting about, should this stay turn-based? Should this be totally action RPG? I was someone that was okay. I think, Travis, you're on the same page of it. And I think Zach too, you just wanted to go straight up action as well. For me, I've already played the original. I think turn-based had its time. Let's try to go more actiony. There's new systems. Let's explore something new. And I think they struck a perfect chord with, okay, we don't need to just do turn-based. That was, it's fun. There's some people that are really hardcore that really love that, but we can add some spice to that. And I think that was this system of action RPG. You are going up, you're hitting with Cloud in real time, but you can hit a button and go into your abilities, start using items and doing that stuff. So I think it's a perfect blend, and it felt really solid to me. Coming off Final Fantasy 15, it's very similar. You can, stagger enemies, all of that similar stuff is in there, but I think they totally refined it to where Final Fantasy VII Remake was at with all that stuff. It felt super smooth. I never was like, frick this system. I never got mad with it, whereas I did, I think, if my memory served me correctly, with Final Fantasy 15 at certain points.
I think personally, coming from Final Fantasy 15, I like that one a little bit more. I'm very much a person who I don't need a whole lot of abilities. It's like I like, a little bit of the button mashing, and it's really position. It's about getting the right position. It's about where 15 you shot to different points so you could heal yourself and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
This one, it took me a long time to actually get into I'm not doing a lot of damage because I'm not using my abilities.
Yeah.
Where like I had to force myself to realize I was like, oh, I need to use, what's the first ability?
Braver.
Braver. Yeah, I have to use that. I have to use the thrust. I have to do this if I want to actually not be in a battle for 15 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
So it took me a while. The magic was never an issue. Like if I wanted to use magic, but actually using everybody's abilities and then being like, oh, I can do everybody's abilities like at different times and like, so I liked it, but it's not my preferred method of combat, but I enjoyed it.
This fit me like a glove. I loved it. And maybe I'm fortunate because they've refined the systems and they brought it all together, but the defining mark of the combat in the first 7 is the limit break system mixed with the ATB and the fact that your characters each have these very distinct abilities, right? On top of the magic and whatever, and we'll get into materia. This game nailed that because your party each control, it's not like they all control the same and then they have a different weapon. Like they are fundamentally from movement, ability to close the gap, abilities, basic attack, heavy attack, like they hitbox even, like they all have such a distinct style and control and feel, and they all feel great. It feels like you can play a character action game from 4 different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I liked switching characters a lot.
Yeah,
I didn't think I would. I was like, maybe I'll just do it for fun. But then you're like, no, I have to do this. It's fun.
They all have a utility, right? Barrett's your range and your tank. Tifa is your brutal, up close, bang it out, get them staggered. Cloud's your main damage outside of Tifa, and he's just a good overall character. He can kind of do it all. You can use him at range with magic. And then Aerith is basically your support, but also she can do some crazy damage depending on the enemy type.
Yeah, on magic, definitely.
Some enemies you need to lean on Aerith more for the DPS. On other enemies you need to lean more for, for Cloud. There were some enemies I knew I needed Tifa to be front and center, and the enemies were so well designed and the scenarios are so well designed, and then they control who's in your party and tune it to the actual specific fight to where you actually fight the same things a couple times, twice or 2 or 3 times, but they give you a different party configuration to where it's basically a different fight. But it's blowing my mind that it worked in 1997 in a turn-based game, and they didn't have to go redesign materia or redesign the weapons or redesign the abilities. They were able to translate all of those things into this action setting. It just shows how well the original was designed.
Yeah.
And it also shows how talented they are to realize we don't have to reinvent the whole freaking wheel with this. From a mechanic standpoint and fighting we do, but from the way materia is designed, the weapons that they have, the abilities, they kept it and they translated it forward, and I think they did an amazing job.
There was a way, and they even told you when you go into the weapons level up system, all that stuff, you can auto select, like, I want to be magic based, I want to be physical attack based, I want to do this. I never did that. I love, as someone who's grown up with, the original Final Fantasy VII, well, I don't know if that actually had level up now I'm thinking about it, but like choosing your abilities and like Final Fantasy X sphere grid stuff, like going and choosing the ability grid and chaining that out. I get addicted to that stuff. I love that feeling of like progress, and this just keeps that flow to where I'm like, I love when I'm in this flow state with this game where I'm going from point to point. The moment I feel like I'm a second bored, this game has pushed me into something new. I'm doing the arm stuff. When I'm bored with the arm stuff and I read that little puzzle thing, I'm like in a new battle with a boss. I'm over here. I'm getting like dumped with a bunch of story stuff.
Some of these harder bosses felt like single player, like damage mode on like a hard raid boss or something, like a little less complicated. But I mean, some of them you had to figure out like, how do I get this guy to stagger, right? Like, and you had to pay attention to you have to scan them. You have to pay attention to what they're doing, what's having effect, what's not. What are the things in the room? And I thought it was fantastic.
I played the demo of this game because I honestly didn't know if I was gonna like be fully invested. I was like, I'm gonna play this demo, and I got to the Scorpion, and Cloud died, and I used up all my potions. I used up everything I could do. You can't cure, no Phoenix down, and I beat him with Barret. I was so mad because I was like, how am I about to beat this with Barret? Like I'm such a main character person. And it blew my mind. So when
your spiky-haired hero was nowhere to be found.
So when I played it again, I learned, I was like, okay, these are the things I need to do. I need to, overcorrect. And Barrett died. And I had to beat it alone with Cloud. So it was very interesting. It's like, oh my gosh, like there's so many different ways that you could go about doing this, even with one person.
I want to jump on what you were saying, Zach, with the Scorpion battle.
Yeah.
I had saw that you can't use items, and I thought that was only in battles. And I was like, okay, I'll just not never do that. I got to that Scorpion battle, just slicing away and having fun. I'm like, okay, I need to use a potion or whatever. I can't use it. And yeah, I think I beat it with Barrett. And I loved hard mode for this. Is from that first chapter when I beat it, I was like, I have got to learn. I have to use every single materia that this game is saying you should use this, or figure out the best combos with the linkage. Linking some of these things. You have to use that to your advantage, and you have to know how to play this game, and you have to know the rhythm of like staggering and all this stuff, or you're dead. The story of this game. That was another thing going into this, along with the battle system. Immediately, people posting pictures of Cloud in the dress. For Corneo's part, is this gonna transfer over to a modern audience? How is this going to work? Is some of the stuff too goofy to work in HD? To which I went, change what you need to. Like, I get that like some stuff in Lego blocks is gonna look a little bit different in HD and 4K. And they kept a lot of it while adding and tweaking certain parts of this. I would describe this game and what they did with the story. Maybe you guys can jump in on this. Coming from somebody that beat the original, I think they did what the anime Evangelion did, which they have the original show, and then they made movies that followed that same trajectory and then just kind of makes their own new kind of arc with it. They add new characters, they add new things, and that's what this kind of felt like, which was Final Fantasy VII, the rebuild. It also goes to show in this, the foundation of the story and these kind of like this avalanche, are they terrorists, are they whatever? Great foundation of a story. This transfers over into HD perfectly because it's a great story. It's awesome characters. You love the characters. You love this world. And I think it transfers over great. But I don't know what you guys thought about that. I know, Travis, that you had played the original. Yeah.
Before I played the first 7, you told me that it's like Star Wars. It's Star Wars, basically. And so when I played it, I was like, yeah, it is. It's like this ragtag group of rebels. They're going up against this thing. There's like some background that you don't know when you start, and then you learn all about how these people might be connected, or certain people might be connected. So it is like Star Wars. They perfectly leaned on that element. Like this game, especially when you're running around with the team and they're quipping and they're doing the music. And I just was floored at a moment when we were like invading the Mako reactor and we're running around and we're shooting guards and they're talking and there's this orchestra music. And I was like, this is better Star Wars than the Star Wars sequels.
Yeah.
This is better Star Wars than what we just got. And this isn't a Star Wars review, but you can go find that elsewhere. But like that was my feeling. So that is at the heart of what this is Star Wars: A New Hope, but in the context of Final Fantasy VII, which is what the first part of Final Fantasy VII always was. And it's also the Evangelion take of, we're going to start the story the same. We're going to weave in things that you're like, that's too early for that guy to be there. Or that doesn't quite make sense. That's different than I remember. Oh, what are these things? This is more meta almost.
Yeah.
And they weave all that in perfectly to a great climax with this game where at the end of the game, it starts off you're retelling the game, but by the end of the game, you're basically taking the axe to the head of the original, not in a disrespectful way, but we're cutting off the limb and now it's going to grow its own direction. And they even say that this is the unknown journey. And so I feel like they nailed that. I have a couple things that I'm like, I don't know. I guess my biggest complaint would be, I don't know if I call it a complaint. It's more just, and I'm curious, Zach, I want to get to you as someone who didn't play the original. Sephiroth in this game he's the only character that I didn't feel like benefited from this new platform and I felt like he's like just, I don't want to say a meme. He's like an icon in this game. He's just an icon. And they lean on him in a way. It's like Darth Vader at the end of Rogue One. every time Sephiroth is in this game. Whereas in the original, you don't really see him at all. They mention him a couple times, and then his introduction is in the tower, you get arrested, and then you fall asleep, your team falls asleep, which doesn't happen in this one. But then you wake up and there's a trail of blood, and you're following this trail of blood, and you're like, what's going on? And you follow it all through, and all the people that have arrested you, like, they're all dead. And then you find him, he's got, you know, the president of Shinra, I think, on his blade, and that's your introduction to Sephiroth. Whereas in this game, your introduction to Sephiroth is in the first 30 minutes, and Cloud sees him in an alley. And then you see him again, and again, and again. And it's fine, because it works for what this game's doing, but I will just say, every other character I felt like benefited from this more fleshed out. Yeah. I mean, with the exception of maybe Cloud, I think he benefits because you get more of an insight into he's moody and you see it better. And whereas in the other game, he came off as just kind of like a chode a little bit, like he's too good to be there. I feel like you empathize. We don't know enough about his character in this one, at least yet. But Sephiroth, I just kind of felt like fell flat. The end fight was really cool, but he didn't have that mystique about him. He didn't have that you feel like he's dangerous or mysterious. You just keep showing up and you don't know why, and then the guys with the cloak show up every time.
I would actually agree with that. I would agree with that. You made a good comparison with Darth Vader. From me, this game is like the Star Wars of the gaming world in some ways. It's these icon characters, and Sephiroth and Cloud, of course, are like the top. And for me, I was giddy and having fun with that history to it, because when Sephiroth shows, it's like, oh shoot. But for someone that has never played Final Fantasy VII, I'm thinking in my head, are they having the same experience as I am? Why
is this guy the final boss? We don't know anything about him.
Yeah.
Why is he telling Cloud to meet him in Fate? We don't know him. You know,
this game, to a point,
it's a sequel to the original.
The game is taking to a point. It's kind of assuming that you at least know some rough ideas about some of these characters to know, like, oh shoot, there's Darth Vader. I mean, Sephiroth. You know what I mean? Like that kind of level of icons. That weight is there. I felt that too in Irith, when Irith was first shown, and these moments and this music comes up, and I'm like, oh, like it just breaks my heart, because I know where the story's going with Irith, or it knows like to see these characters for the first time and see their design and how good they look. It's like, oh.
I've known about Sephiroth. My very first I think interaction was in Kingdom Hearts 2, actually.
I was going to say, you did play Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, that's true.
So I knew about him.
There's the guy from Kingdom Hearts is what you did.
Yeah. No, I think I had enough knowledge, even before I watched the synopsis and stuff like that, to know, like, that's the bad guy. Like, that is the main bad guy. Cloud's your good guy. But I didn't know any side characters, really. So that was really interesting to see him and be like, oh, okay, so what's going on with this?
Yeah.
And you don't really get an answer.
No, you don't. He just says, like, reunion this, reunion that. I'm just like, so what's going on?
Should have been called Final Fantasy VII Reunion.
Right. After, like I said, I played about half the game before I figured out, I was like, I need to come at this like everyone else is, where they played the original. So I need to watch the synopsis, because there really are parts where I feel like you were expected to be like...
They expect you to know a little bit.
So you as a new player stopped and said, halfway through, I better watch the synopsis. That pretty much says it all then. That answers what I was wondering. And maybe it's not a bad thing.
No, I don't think that's a bad thing at all, because it almost had enough to be its own game by itself. But for me, who's someone that gets in the lore and wants to know why everything's going on, I had to go look up stuff.
And I wonder if that's a good choice, because let's go back and compare it to Star Wars. When the new Star Wars movies came out, I think I loved the Force Awakens. I had a fun time with that, but I agree with the sentiment that it is a kind of a hurried up synopsis of those original movies.
This is a great comparison.
And
the Force Awakens.
It's a hurried up kind of like, we got to get you back in because they're 7-year-olds that never watched it.
They keep saying Luke Skywalker, and then at the end she meets him, and you're like, who the F is this guy? If you haven't seen the original, she's giving him a lightsaber. You're like, what is this? Why is this the ending?
But one of the critiques of Force Awakens was it does catch everybody up And for someone that was a long-term fan, that push and pull, that tug of war, the long-term fans are like, we saw this already. With Final Fantasy VII, I think they went, y'all know who Sephiroth is? Boom, y'all know this. And Zach's going, I'm reading Wikipedia, I guess. Like, because you, Zach, I know you had to feel that weight. There were certain parts where they're like winking and nodding, and with certain stuff, especially with like Irene's character and Sephiroth. There was points where it's like, we'll wait for applause here because
I think it's a real issue in some ways because like my brother's never played any Kingdom Hearts, any Final Fantasy. He stopped by to drop something off and I was playing. He's like, oh, this looks, we were talking about it. And I was like, man, you should play this. I think you would like it. And I was about to say, it's a perfect introduction to the series. And I stopped and I was like, I cannot say that.
Yeah.
I can't. It's story-wise, it is not a perfect introduction to the series.
What's going on?
Shh. I'll explain everything later.
Even me playing 7 was left out of the loop on some stuff because I didn't play Crisis Core. And this game references Crisis Core big time with the Zack stuff at the ending. It literally shows him fighting and shooting and all this stuff. And I'm like, I guess I looked it up. In 7, his cutscenes are optional. You don't even have to find those. And then they show stuff that really leans a little bit on Crisis Core with him, where I'm like, okay, I guess, did he live? I don't know. Did he not live? I don't know. And I had to sit down and watch Crisis. I had to watch compilation stuff to get caught up.
To go with the Star Wars thing, you have the Force Awakens part where it's like, okay, you are catching people up, and that's pissing long-term fans off. You have Final Fantasy VII where people like me are like, woohoo, I'm having a good time because I know the weight of it. Whereas Zach and others are coming in like a little bit confused. And because these are like mega icons and they're cultural like gods, at least in the gaming world.
Yeah.
And Star Wars is a cultural god. And
you almost have to forgive it.
I think that you cannot win.
Yeah.
There is a fine line between like getting a fresh start with no expectation and lots of heavy expectation, no expectation. I think that you are going to have to choose a side. And 7 chose the opposite side that Star Wars did. It said, who
but
we
you
are.
know what? And that's a great way to put it because I like this better than Force Awakens. And I know they're totally different things. But with that also, I respect how bold they were with it. Mm-hmm. It's what I wanted. I wanted them to rebuild.
Yeah.
So,
but for newer fans and for Zach going, I guess I need to read this. It sucks.
It's weird. It's like,
it's unfortunate.
I wanted them, at the very beginning of this review, I said I wanted them to make it their own, and they did, and I love it. The other side of the coin, though, is they flesh out these worlds and these characters so much more in this one than they do so. Like, Jessie is a great example.
Yeah.
Her character in the original is like, she didn't have a character. She has a design and she says a couple things to you and she teaches you something on the subway. In this game, she has a personality. She's spunky. She's like very much like front loaded and outward with her personality, but you can tell she's, maybe doing it. She flirts with you a lot, but it's like, I feel like she kind of just does this with everybody. And this is just like her way of relating with the guys. And she's like kissing you on the bridge when you're diving off and they're playing like 80s solo like
I love that
music.
Top Gun, that Top Gun music.
Moment. And then her family, like her dad has Mako poisoning and you see him in the bed when you're stealing and she's like having people over for dinner like none of that was in the original. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, and that's what me and you were fighting with Jacob on the podcast is he's like, I'm only getting 1/4 of the game. I was like, no, like you're getting, you're getting a full course meal where there used to be a Cheez-It. Like
that is one thing that like to the original 7's credit, there are parts in this game, like you even said, like you didn't have to get those Zack cutscenes or you didn't have to get Vincent or you didn't have to get Yuffie and stuff. That this game, I think, does that in a different way of like, we're just going to flesh out these parts and kind of show you even more behind the, the curtain of like, we'll flesh out Barrett, we'll flesh out Jesse and Wedge and Biggs and make them more part of this fun game. Yeah. And we'll give them their own little mission they go on. I loved that additional mission thing. I love like, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, Roach or Roche.
Yeah, Roach.
I love that fight.
Well, the way they set him up, I was hoping he would come back, and he didn't. So he'll probably make an appearance. He'll be the Captain Phasma of this series and pop up every now and then.
Yeah.
He was funny.
It's just fun stuff like that they add that they kind of like, let's just put a little dressing on it. And it goes to the seeing Seventh Heaven in more detail. Let's see these characters in more detail and explore a little bit deeper. Now that we have voice acting, we have these kind of more better graphics. I loved that. I also loved when there would be cutscenes and Irith would like look at you, and it would be like this, like I'm looking at you now.
Yeah. They did it like straight on,
and they would be looking at you like first person almost, like
yeah.
And that was like this. I don't know what that's doing to me, but it's like, because I know where Irith ends up. I know like these characters, Tifa and Baron and stuff. It's like this feels more intimate. It just, I don't know. Like I love that.
They
like,
used a smart use of almost first person perspective to do character moments, and they would tie it to chapters. Like there was a chapter where you're connecting like that with Jesse. Then there was a chapter where you're connecting like that with Tifa.
Yeah.
And there was a chapter where you're connecting like that with Aerith. And then they have almost like a little bit of like you have to kind of choose. It's extremely subtle, but like when you wake up in the sewer, there's Aerith and Tifa laying there, and you're like, gonna run up to, and with the one you don't run up to when they wake up, they're like, oh, like not like in a weird way, but they're noticing. And I just love I like this better than like a game where you have relationships like Mass Effect, where you literally start to have a relationship. I like it so much better when they just tease it and you're making decisions that just like you kind of see personally how it affects the group.
Not playing the original, not wanting, or not really like wanting these like areas to get fleshed out, because I do know that like the very beginning, Midgard was only like a 4-ish hour section. Am I right?
Yeah.
4 or 5 hours. The slums got boring quick. For someone, and that's just because I didn't do this first, so I didn't need, like, I loved all of Jesse's stuff, but like I didn't need all this stuff with like the orphanage. I didn't need all the stuff where you're doing these 50 million side quests.
Did you do the side quests?
Hardly none.
Okay.
Honestly, just because I was burnt out from.
Well, that's interesting. No.
Fatigue.
They're not mandatory. I guess what's interesting to me is if you didn't do them, I would think you wouldn't be stuck in the slums for that long, but it sounds like you still felt like you were.
Yeah, I did I did a few, but like I'm just saying the slums got old quick because it's a lot of the same scenery. So because this game really only has 2 sceneries. It has Midgar and it has the slums. Granted, I think Wall Market gives you a little bit of a break because that's definitely different.
Yeah.
And yes,
Sector 5 and Sector 7 are pretty similar.
Like Sector 5 has more flowers. It's a little prettier. But like just being in that area a lot got a little boring to me.
Probably the only time I felt like my playthrough was dragging was the train graveyard chapter.
I enjoyed that one.
I felt like that was starting to get a little bit to where I was like, did we need to really flesh this out with a whole side story about a ghost and it wasn't bad, but I just was like, I could take it or leave it. We could have gotten out of the sewers and walked through by a couple trains and maybe fight one train boss and then go back to the slums, and I would have been perfectly happy. Like it was probably, I was like, this is the least memorable part of the game, I think, for me.
Something else on the story, to go back on what I originally said, which was, how are they going to translate certain things? And one of those big things being the Don Corneo kind of sneaking mission thing. How do you sneak in there? So in the original, they dress Cloud up in a dress and put him in there with Tifa and Irith. How are they going to translate that to HD? Is that too goofy and silly to work?
Not to mention maybe kind of racy, maybe kind of scandalous, depending on the way they handle it.
Yeah, because like what was the original, and that was the discussion, was the original talking about transgender, or are we kind of poking fun at that? Is that able to translate well in nowadays thing? And I think what they did was so perfectly handled. I was literally belly laughing at what they did, while it's still respecting, hey, if you want to, if you are transgender and there are certain issues with that, like
in there too.
Yeah, and dressing up, it's like, it kind of celebrates.
They pulled a rabbit out of a hat with that.
Yes, I think they satisfied both sides.
They're Japanese. They're Japanese. I know they have a localization team, but like America has a very particular kind of a culture around some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And that can be hard to get through in translation. How many freaking Japanese games like Persona get killed for the way they handle LGBT or transgender or like, I mean, they're falling and they get caught up in that kind of sphere of argument all the time. And this game, like they just took it in stride and they did great.
For me, from someone that loved the original and what they did, like that mission was goofy fun. I was like, I was coming into this, I didn't get anything spoiled for me. I was like, is this happening? And I felt like, again, with the way they did Sephiroth with, we're going to like breadcrumb you to this. And we know what you want. We know like the weight of this whole, Sephiroth thing. I think they knew the weight of this going into the wall market area. They kept dropping little hints. I would get like giddy, like, is it happening? Or did they keep it? And then like, sure enough, Irene's like, you need to come back. You're coming, we're not going in alone. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I get giddy. And man, they went above and beyond my expectation.
Yeah, Walmart is fantastic.
They put you in there in the Honeybee Inn and they say, we're putting you on stage. And Cloud's like, what? So I think this part works. It's one of my favorite moments in the entire game because the whole game, Cloud, like the original, and even more fleshed out like all the other characters are, no, I'm here for a mission.
Yeah, very
I'm here
serious.
for this. Very serious, very stern, very stoic. And they put him up on stage and he just starts dancing. It's literally Twin Peaks level. We'll just crap on everything we just created in this whole game of this serious character, and we're just gonna have him.
I'm sorry to go back on music, and now that you reminded me of that, that was my favorite song.
Oh yeah, that little dance beat. Yeah, that was sick. That was awesome.
And the whole thing.
But here at the Honeybee.
It's even goofier. They lean into it more. It's so stupid and goofy and fun, and we're just having a good time. And like, hey, if you want to put on a dress and have fun, and we're doing it, and they just make it fun. I think to me, I haven't heard any complaints about that. I think they just nailed the landing. They freaking stuck the landing. So here we go.
The line that was gender, beauty isn't defined by gender.
Yeah,
I think that with that little cherry on top, I think just made it to where it's like, okay, this is like even celebrates it almost at that point.
Yeah, let's have fun, and we're not making fun of it. We're having fun. We're all having fun here. We're all in on the joke that we're just.
That's what drag is.
We're just having this. We're just having a good time, and we're dancing, and we're all in on this goofy fun, and we just made it goofy and fun. So awesome on that. I do want to talk about 2 complaints I had with this game, and it comes into the story stuff. So as far as like expanding the story, exploring the world, had fun. Red 13, and I could be wrong on this. But Red 13 doesn't come in, of course, I think, until Cosmo Canyon and all that stuff.
No, you're wrong.
He comes in earlier? He comes in on this?
He's exactly there. He comes in. And this is something I was interested why they changed it. They have a conversation in both the original 7 and this 7 with that doctor, the crazy doctor. And he says we're going to breed Aerith. Yeah, he says we're going to breed with Aerith. In the original 7, he drops Red 13 in her cage and says they're both the last of their species. Maybe they'll figure it out, implying that he was going to have Red 13 and Aerith breed together in the original. But in this one, instead, when they free Aerith, he comes out and helps. But yeah, he comes in here.
Oh, I don't know why I forgot that.
But you just don't use him in your party until you get outside the city.
I knew definitely
but he's
that.
there. He came at the right time.
Why did I think Cosmo Canyon? It's been a little.
He's from Cosmo Canyon, or that's where like the other dogs are.
Yeah. So on top. Well, that wasn't really my complaint. I didn't complain that they switched around in my head. If I
know your complaint is going to be.
But my complaint is that he is more of a support character instead of someone in your party.
It's like an NPC.
But this is a half complaint. This is a complaint on hold, on layaway, because I'm expecting that this was so late into the game that they made this part. It's like right at the end. Are we going to add an old new thing with abilities and skill tree stuff with this?
Yeah.
This late in the game. So I gave it a pass for that, and I'm just holding on to this.
He'll be playable in the next one.
I'm holding on this complaint that he'll be
There's
back
no way. There's no way they'll do that. He came in so late. He's in the last 2 chapters of the game.
Yeah. But, and with that, with him being a support character in this thing, I'll accept that if, of course, that he does that in the next game. The second complaint story-wise for me is that and we didn't get to talk about this before I get into complaint territory. I do want to say that one reason I loved the original, and I think this game excelled above the original, is that I think it just made it a bigger deal. I think with the acting and voice acting and all this other stuff is when you come out of the city and you've bombed the thing. In the original, it was just like, yeah, frick him, get back at Shinra. And I could be wrong because it's been a while since I played. I got wrong with this Red 13 thing, but in this game, people are like, hey, I'm hurt. Like, people are kind of hurt, and like the rubbles fall on them, and they're like kind of trying to get out of the city, and they're scared, and kids are scared. Like, who did
and
this?
Jesse even struggles with that and feels bad almost. And then you got that girl getting up proclaiming news, and there's like a fake news angle where they're blaming it on Wu Tai. And
and this stuff. And I loved that because right out the gate, in the original, it's like, yeah, let's take down Shinra, and that is the spirit of it. You are these rebels taking on this way bigger thing, and this, of course, as the game goes on, this is the right choice. You are the good guys, but right at the beginning, and we're terrorists. You know what I mean? Like, it's right there. It's like, are we terrorists?
I mean, going against the normality, and you're trying to
it's
take
like,
it down.
And people are like getting their like buildings blown up and businesses in this area.
It was a great character moment when Barrett was yelling at the president and was going to kill him, and was like, "You don't do any, you're evil." And the president's like, I mean, people do have running power and electric here. Like,
yes, I love that too.
People do like get surgery and like have a way to feed their families. Like,
yeah,
I understand that, I'm greedy. What he didn't say that, but he is an ass. But like, he is like providing the platform to allow people to live their lives.
And I love that turmoil is expanded on in this. And I freaking loved it. Because Barrett is like,
it adds a
I'll
third
just
dimension.
kill anything. Yeah.
It adds a third dimension because Barrett even is like, oh, okay, well, and he backs off, and then Sephiroth kills him.
So that really makes right back to the freaking when you get the game and it's on the cover of like, we're taking down this big thing, but it comes with the moral kind of like, are we good guys in this? And all this thing. Yeah. I love that they expand on that, which brings me to the ending of this game.
Loved it.
So when I was talking about the taking on something bigger than yourselves, expanding on the characters, I'm loving all that. We're exploring these slums more. Some Final Fantasy games, everything up to this, I think they pulled the wool over my eyes a little bit with this game because I just really loved the story, and I loved the arc and what they were doing with this, and they weren't wasting my time in doing this. With all these Final Fantasy games, my personal complaint leading back to freaking Final Fantasy 1 is they get to the end and they're like, the person you were fighting, let's say, Dark
Gomez or whatever,
Dark Angel Man, and he's your main enemy, and then you kill that guy, and it's like, guess what? That's not in my final form, and you have to fight 16 forms of this thing that doesn't even look like the original villain. I don't give a frick. I don't care. I'm fighting a giant castle by the end of it with lion heads sticking out, and that's every freaking Final Fantasy game. And this game gets to the end, and it cannot help itself. You fight a faceless spirited thing.
You fight a thing. You fight like a blob of ancient or whatever, or what's the thing that you fight that, then you fight Rufus, then you fight like Fate and all of Fate's sub-fates.
Yeah.
Kill the big Fate, and then you fight Sephiroth. Like, it's just
Well, I was kind of like, okay, so like you said, like you fight that, you do that, you're on a bicycle, like you have to fight a big robot with Barrett and Tifa, and then you're on a motorcycle chase.
I want to say that's awesome. I love that motorcycle.
But it becomes disconnected from the narrative at a point.
Yeah.
Well,
let me back up. Let me back up a little bit, because I don't want to feel like I'm like crapping on the whole ending. They had, I want to say, the production value on this game, they spared no expense.
Yeah.
The cutscenes in this game and moments, especially in that Shinra Tower stuff, is like 11 out of 10. Like,
I love the moment with the motorcycle. Go. Yeah, that's so iconic.
That was the moment when it's like, whoa, we're like surrounded, everything's over, and then it's like, no, like, duh, why didn't I remember that they showed that motorcycle when you get up those stairs? It's right there. There's a collector's edition of it, and I just forgot that it was in there. I was so suspended in the story. When you hear that vroom, 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 and that pulls up, it's like, love that moment. I loved the final like thing on the highway. And after that, I was like, I am like, they've thrown so much at me. Let me take a breather for a second. And we go into a fight with some faceless things I don't give a frick about. I wish you would have fought Sephiroth. I'm fine. Some people didn't like that Sephiroth was kind of like in there at that point. I think at this point, if they're changing stuff, I would like to fight Sephiroth.
I'm opposite.
Really?
I would not have.
I liked the Fate fight, and I thought it was a perfect final boss. I did not like Sephiroth coming in at the end.
Wow, we're opposite on that end.
And here's why. Because they keep showing these whispers, and they keep showing that they're keeping everything on a certain grid. Like, this is what has to happen because this is what happened originally, and this is the way it needs to be. This is the canon, right? Like, Barrett dies, but no, he can't die. This and this, right? And so then Aerith says very clearly, and Sephiroth says, if we're going to do what we need to do, we have to get rid of Fate. We have to take Fate out. Mm-hmm. So you go in there, and I felt like you were fighting the strings of Fate. You had all these guys, and they were connected. I felt like that was this game was the entire meta narrative of this game was getting out from under the shadow of Final Fantasy VII. Yeah. So to me, the perfect final boss for this game was killing the strings that are holding everybody's attention to being like the original Final Fantasy VII. Sure. It was a meta narrative. That was the boss.
Yeah.
If the game was we killed them and then we land outside the city and it's like, what's next? And it's like, we don't know. And then you look out on the horizon and you see like the faint like shadow of Sephiroth. Yeah. That would be awesome.
That's what I would have.
That's what I wanted. I would have wanted killing Fate. You land on the outside of the city and it's like, what now? And you don't know, but you're looking ahead.
I would have.
But when you kill Fate, but then you also fight Sephiroth and you best him. But then it's like you didn't really best him because right before you did the final blow, he disappeared. But then he was up in space with Cloud, like looking on the meteor. And then now Cloud's not in space and he's back here. I felt like they botched it. I felt like they had it and then they added it. And it's okay. It was fun. It was fun to fight Sephiroth. They felt like they needed Sephiroth to be fightable. You didn't need him to. It's fine. It was fun. But I felt like Fate being the final boss worked perfectly, and they got away from it.
Maybe Fate could have stayed. I don't know. I just hate coming from the other games of fighting these faceless things. After the cool motorcycle fight at the end, like let's escape from Shinra Tower. Let's escape from this tower. All the stuff, the fun stuff with Rufus. Like I liked that fight a lot.
I think it's different because when you fight like Sephiroth, right? And this is a good example, or Kefka in Final Fantasy VI. Yeah. When you kill Kefka turns into like a demigod.
Yeah.
And then you kill the demigod and it turns into like a church or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't know what all happens. Painting. This game, there's nothing in Final Fantasy VI's stories about those gods or the painting or the archangel or any of that. In this game, they're very clear. You've seen the strings of fate from the first part of the game.
Yeah.
So it's not a faceless enemy. I don't, for me at least, I connected. I felt like I was fighting the thing that's been trying to steer this the whole time.
Okay.
When died and they stitched him up. When we were trying to do this and they blocked me at the church, I felt like I was fighting the god of that. It worked for me. 100%.
I get that. I wish maybe a version of it that I liked. I guess I just didn't. I think
the design.
I think we all had some semblance of, maybe Zach will jump in there in a second, but like a complaint about the ending that didn't feel perfect, didn't fit perfectly with me, which is all of that stuff could happen on the highway and maybe tie in the Fate stuff where there is a one-on-one fight with Cloud with Sephiroth and you go in for the kill and that Fate thing takes out again. And it's like, and then he goes away and then it's like, that is the ending. It's like, we need to chase that guy and then do whatever you got to do for the ending. Cause like, again, I just don't like
have the Sephiroth be first and then they decide to take out Fate.
Well,
invert it. Like they duel on the highway, and then he stabs Sephiroth, and then Fate puts Sephiroth back together, and Sephiroth leaves, and then they're like, "We need to go fight Fate."
Yeah, something where it's like, I get the Fate stuff. I didn't think about that before. I knew that was part of it, but like, I just don't like. I have a thing against with all these games fighting a faceless, weird demon monster at the end. I don't give a frick. Like Sephiroth, at least is like I know who Sephiroth is.
To you,
I know
in
who,
the context of this game, Sephiroth is nobody. He's
so
a
are
dude
these
that
fates.
keeps-
So are these
No.
weird looking things.
No, I disagree.
I don't know who they are.
You don't know who. It's very clear they're the people controlling the whispers.
But why couldn't Sephiroth have been like a fate? You know what I mean? Like,
Because
it's
Sephiroth's a person.
It's
Fate
just
is a
vision.
construct.
It's just a vision or something. I don't know, but like,
you have to think about it too, where like these whisperers are literally like trying to almost. It seems like they're trying to steer you the same path
Yeah.
as the original game. And if you
that's a good
defeat
point.
these,
Yeah.
if you
That's
defeat these, like you're able to, like what Travis said, it's almost like you're making. By
Yeah.
defeating this, you're making this series, this reboot, its own thing.
I like that. I like
That's
that.
what
That
it
makes
is.
sense.
Yeah, you nailed it, Zach. That's exactly
I
what
like
it
that.
is.
I like the way I like that. I hadn't thought of that. I just came in with the notion and with that fight and even like the Sephiroth, as much as I did like that, it was very aggravating on hard mode. But with that and the ending with Zach coming into this and whatever else,
That was cool.
I thought I'm excited for the sequels. I'm excited to where this goes. I loved also. I did want one thing I did like when they're fighting Sephiroth and stuff is the kind of visions like when Red 13 was running.
Yeah, it was cool.
And Irie, like the scene
That's
where
where the
she
game
dies.
went full on. If you don't know what's happening,
Yes.
you know.
But I love that because like, oh gosh, you're breaking my heart already. It was already breaking my heart, like seeing Irie and knowing where this is going. But all that to be said, I felt like that with the Zack stuff and all this stuff comes in at the end and whatever. I was like, yep, the director of Kingdom Hearts is definitely here because Travis, you're playing the Kingdom Hearts series currently.
Yeah.
Get ready, brah. Like that story and where they go. So I felt like at the
Kingdom
end.
Hearts so far has been so straightforward and vanilla. It'll be interesting.
Welcome.
Wait till 2.
So that's where the director, that's where I'm kind of spooked because I felt like they did such a great job and they didn't get into this kind of my heart and the darkness and even the fate stuff to a point. It's like, please hit the brakes. Don't hit the gas too much on this. So, and on your point with the Crisis Core stuff, I never played Crisis Core and the Zack stuff didn't bother me because I guess I did see those scenes in the original Final Fantasy VII. I know Crisis Core existed. I know he was, he fought alongside Cloud. I still didn't feel like there was stuff where I cared about to have seen with Crisis Core. Maybe there was.
Yeah,
maybe you can kind of expand
okay.
on that, but
Maybe I don't know where Crisis Core picks up and where the original game scenes ended. So
Crisis Core is a pre. I think it's.
well,
it
no, I
happens
know
with
that.
sequel,
I'm just
yeah.
saying maybe my memory of the two is getting combined.
Yeah.
But I watched. What I'm trying to say is I watched some cutscene review stuff of Crisis Core right after I finished 7.
Yeah.
And I felt like, man, it would have been nice to have seen this before I played 7 because I did not know who this guy was or what this was all about. I
Okay,
remembered
'cause-
Zack vaguely as a guy that showed up with Sephiroth in a town at one point.
Zach
That was my memory.
Zach also might have been in Advent Children,
He is.
and maybe that's a reason
I think,
I'm more familiar with him. If he's not, I'm familiar with Zach.
Yeah.
I knew who he
is
was.
rough.
He's part of the lore.
Zach is very much brought up in any synopsis video that you will watch with
Yeah.
even Final Fantasy VII. Like,
Because he's
He's
definitely in
brought up
the
a
original
lot.
7. He's definitely in there. I remember those scenes like that he's fighting.
Yeah, he's in there.
But I didn't feel like. I guess
He felt like a total side character. He was not important enough to the original game to be a pivotal person in the final cutscene of the game.
Yeah, it's
To
more
end the story. It's like, who
Yeah.
the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
I don't know. For me,
it was a take it or leave it for me with that. I just get spooked on the one side of like, oh gosh, the Kingdom Hearts director is getting his way a little bit on this, and part 2 of that I didn't feel like I missed anything. Like I played the original, and there's Zach, and I know who he is. But yeah, it goes full force on the Sephiroth stuff of like,
yeah.
a new player's like really lost on that ending.
Yeah,
like, if you haven't seen Zach.
and it was really cool for me because, like I said, it's like you're cutting the strings of fate, and then all of a sudden, hey, Zach's alive.
Yeah.
Dude,
So-
Zach Campbell, I'm with you. Like, that is how I saw it. So I actually felt like final bosses fall flat for me a lot of times. I felt like that was a brilliant way because at this point in the game, in the original, there was no final boss. You fight the Buster on the highway, and then you're gone. You leave the city. That's it. So to me, like, having fate be the person you kill to break the strings of fate and to make it to where anything can happen moving forward. I thought that was a brilliant move. I thought it was a great boss.
Absolutely.
I thought the design was cool. I felt like I was fighting like these crazy like bitchin' wizards and stuff, and it was a really fun fight. I thought it was great.
I felt a little fatigued. I felt like they could have wrapped it up a little sooner. That's my only complaint, because I have felt that way with every single Final Fantasy game I've ever played. That is always my complaint on every single one. Checkbox is I'm ready to wrap it up, and after that motorcycle thing, I would have been fine with a little mini fight with Sephiroth and the Fate stuff you guys mentioned. I hadn't thought about that. Would have been cool. Tie that in somewhere to where Fate whatever, and then you end it and wrap it up. Like, because I felt like I was on cloud 9. I felt like just end it. I feel in the same way with all these freaking Final Fantasy games. So, but it didn't run it. I felt like as much as it did feel like it a little bit wore out's welcome, it was nowhere close to the other Final Fantasy games. Cool. Well, I think we get into final thoughts and our final review scores. So, I freaking loved this game. I loved it so much I went back on hard mode, played it for 80 plus hours in platinum. I only do that to games I freaking adore, and I adored this game. The combat is addictive. I wanted to keep going. They deepened the character, development of these characters and your relationship with them. They expanded the world. One little mini nugget, I just had to mention this because I just love little details like this. In the detail department, when you first get to Jesse's father's house, if you go on the side of the house, so you have to sneak in, there looks to be like Mako on the side of that house, like powering, like that's their electrical box. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
I didn't know.
But cool stuff like that, that's like, oh, this just makes you live like you're lived in this world. And this, you really feel like you have lived in this world. You've gone through the slums. You feel like you are this, ragtag group of guys and girls trying to fight against this organization. I think they deepened everything from the original and expanded on it. I loved that. And I'll give my score and then another kind of note on it. So I give this game a 4 out of 5, a rad with a placeholder. I think that this paired with the other games, I want to see what else they're going to do and kind of, combining it with what are they about to do with this, because I already love the characters. I want to see what these other places that I love, Cosmo Canyon and Gold Saucer and stuff, how are they going to combine this? It has the potential to be better than the original. I think that's going to be maybe blasphemy to some people. That I almost wanted to give it a classic in some regards because they had so much fun. Everything's so tight. But I think I had to give it a rad because when I'm looking at games like The Witcher, where I love the side quests and that, these side quests are like, you can play them, you really could miss them and not miss too much. But I love the core stuff of this game. But I definitely give it a rad. I will definitely be playing the other games, and it has the potential to surpass the original for me. So a 4 out of 5 on my scale.
Yeah, I'm in a really similar place, I think, with this game. I loved playing it. I had a fantastic time. And my criticisms of it are in a lot of ways, they're small things, right? But they carry enough weight that, to me, to feel like a game is a classic, I need for it to be holistic in some sense, to where it stands by on its own, right? And this game doesn't. I think anybody could play and have a good time. I don't think that the experience I had with it, and sometimes like a sequel could get a classic, like a Metal Gear Solid 3, right? Mm-hmm. Where, but that game stands on its own. I feel like anybody could play that game and enjoy it. It's not constantly referencing a different instance where Naked Snake went through Russia and, so to me, this game is a 4 out of 5, a rad. I loved it. Huge potential to be my game of the year. I had a fantastic time with it. I have a hard time seeing another game coming out this year that I'll have as much just pure fun with. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But and I'm with you. I think that this it set the foundation. I felt the same way. Evangelion, the rebuilds, the first rebuild movie, I really liked it a lot. I had a great time. It set a great foundation for the second movie, which I actually think is my favorite of any of them. And the second movie is actually maybe my favorite. If I'm going to sit down and watch just something Evangelion, I might just watch Evangelion 2.0. And so I feel like this has set us up to where, Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 or Part 3 could be my favorite Final Fantasy VII anything. It's set up that way. And hopefully they continue to do exactly it exceeded my expectations. So
yeah.
Great time.
And one other small note. So if you have to play the first 4 hours on PS1 of the original or this game, which is the expanded Midgar, I'm choosing this. Like, I'm choosing this. And that's why I had a hard time, because like the original is a classic. 7 to me is a 5 out of 5. But I'd rather play this part for just that part. That's why I'm kind of in the balance, and that's why I chose Rad, because of
the other thing is part of what you get when you just tell the first section of the story is you don't really get really beautiful character arcs.
Yeah.
These people kind of end. It's a very tiny arc. Cloud's arc is he's working for these people, and now he's their friend. Yeah. That's it. Like, that's his only arc. You don't know anything about his background or anything.
Yeah.
Right? Sephiroth has no character development in this game at all. Period.
Yeah.
Right? Tifa doesn't really get into her arc. Aerith, you don't really get into her arc. Her arc is kind of she embraces that she's an ancient, but she never really wasn't embracing it. I don't know. Like, so that's another reason why I have a trouble time giving this game a classic is there's no arcs, you know?
Yeah.
It's very popcorn, fun, awesome, great time. But the characters don't really go anywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Besides maybe Barrett. I think Barrett maybe has the best arc out of any of them.
Yeah.
In that he accepts that to really do what he wants to do, he has to do more than just demonize the company or whatever. So
well, Cloud goes from very serious to dancing on a stage to electronica, so I'm gonna have to give him a good arc too. But what about you, Zach?
I think well, real quick to just add on to that, I think Cloud, he ends up lightening up.
Yeah,
like
he does, and that's his arc. But when you compare it to his arc in the original game, I mean, like, you're getting you know,
you have a
he
full
has a
game.
whole,
You have a full way.
He has a whole backstory, and they're going to do that as part of a trilogy or a quadrilogy or whatever they do here. But
so I think I'm going to end up adding this to the hat trick. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5 as well. This was great. Like, this was a great introduction to this game. I think it's hard to say if doing the research, if you just wanted to play this game for this and then the sequels, if it all would pan out, if you would have waited. I think because of that, I can't give it that classic, like, it stands on its own, like what you guys said.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had to go back and I had to do the little bit of research.
Yeah.
But it just, you had an amazing combat system to where it was a compromise of being able to hack and slash, and you still had to have strategy with your abilities. The story it was paced extremely well, you know, and you met all these new characters. But that being said, from a fresh set of eyes, you know, you had the cat guy who I can never remember his name.
Kate Seth.
You had him just literally appear for a second, and it's almost like, why even do that if you don't have any reason to?
If you're gonna tease him, show him like in like a picture or something, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, you know, there's little nods that, you know, everybody who had played before would be like, oh my gosh, like, it's cat guy. But it was a blast. I had fun. I couldn't set down the controller.
Yeah.
I mean, you can ask my wife. She was like, "You're playing this game again?" But yeah, 4 out of 5.
I'm glad you enjoyed it because you hadn't played the original. But that's fun that all of our perspectives, we reached the same point. This is fate.
Yeah.
Perhaps this is fate that we ended up at the same scores.
But I will say,
and perhaps
the Whispers.
The Whispers joined our Zoom call.
I think the second one is going to be my favorite. I would say this was the setup movie. This was the
Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Before we get to the Last Jedi, the best one.
Yeah. It could be very similar. I will say, I don't think they could have done a better job. Besides our little nitpicks, they nailed it.
Yeah.
It's just what this could be. They maximized what this part of it could be.
Yeah.
This literally was like, hey, here's these characters. Here's a really fun, you know, story to get you started. I'm excited to see what they do with the next one.
Yeah. It's almost like it's a 4 out of 4. It was never gonna be capable of being a full classic because they can't do the full arcs.
Yeah.
Especially if you're stuck in that, you know, you're stuck in Midgar. Like, you can only do so much. Like, as great as it is, you could really only do so much. And it's almost like this, they made an opening of a game a full game.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, we're ready to let you out into
Yeah.
the world with this next one.
So, as Papa John says, stay tuned. We'll be staying tuned for the second part. I hope you guys have enjoyed our group review of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I cannot believe I'm even saying that. That game, it's been years, so I think they just, of course, you've heard it from us, folks. We loved it. We had a good time. Put in the comments, what do you guys think? Is it a 4 out of 5? Is it a 5 out of 5? What will fate say in the comments? We'll see. And if you're Sephiroth, don't you dare get in my head.
In my veins flows the blood of ancients. This planet is my birthright.